Welcome to today's art project with Miss Oropesa. In today's video, boys and girls, we're going to learn how to paint these beautiful trees. Now, these aren't just any ordinary trees. These are special trees. They are among the tallest trees in the world and are situated in the Big Basin Redwoods State Park in California. Now, one of the things that I enjoy when I'm out and about exploring nature and hiking is using these little viewfinders that you can actually easily make from paper. All you need to do is cut out a rectangular shape and then a smaller rectangle within the inside. Now, you can do this by folding your paper and getting your scissors and cutting out the inside rectangle. So when you open it up, this could be your viewfinder. It really helps finding different views, just like a photograph or a snapshot of something, like a landscape. Okay, so to get started with my background of my painting, that's going to be the sky area. We're going to go ahead and choose like a blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to dilute our blue as much as we can so it can be nice and watered down, and we'll make it look like clouds in the end. So what we need to do is we need to take our paintbrush, and so I have my brush here that I'm going to dry out really well. And I'm going to go ahead and pour some of that blue with my paintbrush, just like if I was scooping it into my tray. So I'm going to get 2 good dips of my blue. Okay? Just like if it was a spoon. Okay, I have a lot of blue here. Now I'm going to dilute it. That means that I'm going to take some of my water now and make it as watery as possible. So I'm just going to dip my brush constantly into the water and bring it over to my paint. So it's gonna water down little by little and mix it in. So I'm gonna get some more, get some more, get some more. And you start to see how it starts to get very watery. I'm gonna get a little bit more, just to see how it's coming along. And I can already see my blue at a watered down point. Just a little more. Just dip in the water and spread into the paint. Okay, and I think I'm about all done there with the mixing and watering it down. It's pretty. If I kind of tilt my plate, I can see the water kind of moving around. That's great. That's what I want to see. And I still have some of the blue in there. So what I'm going to do with this blue is I'm going to start with my whole canvas and painting it in with that blue color all over the place. So we just want to cover up the whole entire canvas first with that nice wet wash. Okay, this is just for our background color. So before it dries, we're going to move on to the next step in just a bit. So here's my final little area there. And this is still wet, so I can actually go in there and I can tell, so I can move the paint around. All this area here is still wet. Good. Awesome. Now, I'm going to set this aside. Now, I'm going to take my towel and I'm going to crunch it up into a little ball. Just roll it. Now that I have some texture on the surface there, I'm going to go ahead and tap and remove some of the excess amount of paint, at the same time creating some wonderful texture. Tap. all the way around on the surface of your canvas, just like this. Tap, 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 tap. Okay. There we go. Just a little extra here and there if you miss some spots. And there you go. Now you have wonderful sky texture that we can work with. All that extra paint has been absorbed by our little towel. So we can set that aside. And now we're ready to move on to our next step. So for this next step, our painting does need to be somewhat dry. So if you run your fingers through it, and you can actually tell when it's completely dry, when the paint doesn't stick to your hands anymore. If it does a little bit, you can either tap it a little bit more on the dry area of your towel, or you can just wait for it to completely dry. So once it's all nice and dry, we're going to move on to our next step. We're going to need a pencil. If you don't have a ruler, you can actually use a pencil as a straight edge, like a ruler, like that. Okay, so that could be my ruler. If I were to trace a line, it would be straight. Any straight edge would work. So something that is straight on the end will work if you don't have a ruler. I'm going to be using my ruler, and I'm going to start off with the trunk of a tree with one of the sides here. So from here to the bottom there, on the top side of my canvas to the bottom side of my canvas, and it's going to come all the way to the middle there. So I'm going to bring it to the center right there with my pencil, making a nice dark line, and that line is going to connect to this line here. So now I'm going to put it together and connect my next line. So it looks like a very, very long triangle. All this area here is going to be my trunk for my tree. Now let's make a whole bunch of those. I want to make another one here in the middle. So again, I'm going to make one line, make it nice and dark. And remember, it has to be thin at the top and thick at the bottom. So here I'm just fixing my ruler there so it can help me make it from thin to thick. So there's my next trunk right there. So far I have 2 trunks. Let's keep making some more all the way around. Some are going to be larger than others. So now I'm going to go ahead and make another one here. This one's going to come almost all the way to the top. There's my line there. But then again, remember, we have to keep it thin at the top and thick at the bottom, so it can create that nice illusion of depth and give it some perspective as if we're looking at the trees from bottom to top, as if we were laying down. So now I have 1, 2, 3 triangular shapes to represent my trees. I think I'm going to do one more on each side here. One here and one here. So again, bring your line towards the center there. And your next line will be from thin to thick. And I actually think I have 2 more trees over here that I want to put in there. I have a lot of space, so I'm going to do one here. I'm going to bring my line from thin to thick. So notice how each one of those trees is shaped like a long triangle. Like a very, very long triangle. So far I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long trunks. And here I'm going to add one more on the side here. Even if it's just peeking a little to the side. That's okay. Just want to make my painting interesting. And there you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our image here. We have our main tree trunks, but we also have some that are further away. So let's go ahead and focus on those. They're further away so we can fit them in between our trees that we already have. So if I were to take my pencil and write in between these trees that we already have there, I can make some that are also the same shape. So there's my first line there, triangular shape. But they're just right in between, and they seem to be farther away. So I'm just going to make that one there. Stops right there. Not all the way to the top, because these are a closer view. Right there. And I think I could fit another one here. So I'm going to just kind of mark it right there. Just going to make that line into a triangle. And there's my next one right there. Alright, so now we can go ahead and move on to the coloring part. Now we're going to make some brown for our trunks. And for that, we're going to need our primary colors. So I'm going to take my tray here, or my plate. I'm going to do a lot of mixing now, so I do need to clean my brush really well. And in this case, I don't want to dilute it with water, okay? So we're not going to mix any water into our paint. That means that we do need to have a clean brush. So just wipe it off really, really well. And we're going to set the water aside. It'll still help us clean our brush, but we're not going to be adding water to our paint like we did here. So we're going to start with yellow, then red, then blue. With these three colors, these are our primary colors, and all mixed together will make brown. So let's make some brown for our tree. We're going to start with the yellow first. And with my paintbrush, I'm going to scoop it like a spoon. Scoop and pour into my plate. Okay, so scoop it in. Very good. About 5 or 6 scoops. Alright, one more. Here we go. Okay. Now that we have about 5 or 6 scoops in there, that's plenty of paint right there that I can use. And at this point, my brush is saturated with yellow, so I do need to clear that off because I'm going to use a different color now to add it to my yellow. So in this case, we're going to use red. We're going to take one good dip and add it in there, maybe 2. Okay, we'll see how that goes. 2 of the red. Okay, clean your brush. And now we're going to move on to the blue. And for the blue, we're only going to get one good dip of the blue. So there we go. Now I have my yellow, my red, and my blue. I have about 5 or 6 of yellow, 2 of red, and 1 of blue. So we mix those together to make our brown. Mix, 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 all the way, really, really well. And remember, don't add any water to this. Alright, So there's our brown right there. So why did we add so much yellow? Yellow, it tends to be our bright color. It tends to be less intense. So we need a lot of yellow, a little bit of blue, and a little bit more of the red than the blue. And there we go. Now we have our mixture for our brown. So I do want to test it out. I'm going to get a sheet of paper here. And let's see what it looks like. Oh, there you go. That's a pretty good brown there. I think that'll work. Okay. For our tree. Our trees there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start filling in our tree trunks. So those long triangular shapes that we just made, let's go ahead and fill them in as best as we can. One at a time. Spreading out that nice brown color and filling it in. Just make sure that it stays thin at the top, and as it goes down to the bottom, it's going to be thicker because that's the big trunk there, right there at the bottom, and it's getting some perspective towards the top there. Alright guys, now while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and also add some branches. Just straight little lines connecting over to our trunks, just like this. So I'm going to choose one little trunk at a time. So I started with the middle one, and I'm going to go from top to bottom, adding some of those branches there. Then I'm going to move on to my next branch and add some more branches from top to bottom. Okay, I'm going to do that same idea all the way around throughout my trunks. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take our brush, make sure it's nice and clean for our next step, because we're going to start adding our leaves to our trees. And for that we need to get some different variations of green. So I'm just going to put my tray here so you guys can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with some green. Get plenty of that green right in the middle. So I'm going to scoop it up many times, maybe about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We need a lot of that green onto our plate. 9, 10. Okay, about 10 times there, more or less. Okay, so make sure you kind of spin your brush around so that you can have all that paint over to your tray. So that kind of helps if you spin it around. Okay, and let's go ahead and clean it off so we can add our next tone there, which is going to be our light tone. So we're going to have green, light green, and then some dark green over here. So we're going to add some white to part of our green right in this area. You can just, I'm not going to dip it in without cleaning my brush because it has a lot of green there. So if I dip this brush in here, it's going to contaminate my white. I don't want that to happen. So just going to mix it in. I got plenty of white right there. Just going to spin my brush a little bit, get all that white and the green on there. Okay, so now I have my light green right there. And I also want a little tiny bit of black. So for my black, I just need to dip. I'm going to clean my brush really well. Make sure it's nice and clean with your towel. Wipe it off really good. Now just a little tiny bit of the black. You see that? Just the tip. And I'm going to borrow some of that green and mix it in with my black. And there, automatically, you see that I have a dark green. So now I have dark green, green, and light green. So those are great colors that we can use for our leaves. Okay, if you want to add a little tiny bit more of the black, you could, depending on how dark you want it. Okay, there's plenty of that right there. Alright, so now I have my dark green, green, and light green. So all I did was I used black to shade my green, and I used white to tint my green. Okay, so with these three colors, or these three different tones of green, I'm going to start my leaves, and I'm just going to tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. And making it look like a pine tree. So I'm going to start with the bottom one here. But as I go lower to the bottom, I'm going to use my dark green. And when I come towards the center part, right in this area here, I am going to use my regular green. And at the very top of the tree, I'm going to use my light green. Okay. And just tap, 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 tap. So there's my first one right there. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing with my next one. But this time I'm just going to add a little bit of the dark green towards the bottom areas here. Then I'm going to go on to my regular green. And at the very top, I'm going to clean my brush and add the lightest green at the top. Just mix it in really well. And look at that. Beautiful. It's coming along. So again, the reason why we're doing the dark green at the bottom is because there's more shading towards the bottom area. There's not a lot of light as there is towards the top. So now I'm going to my next tree here. Just going to be careful not to cover up too much of my other tree. Then I'm going to get some of the regular green towards the middle part. And a little bit of my, I could just wipe my brush as I'm going along, and a little bit of the lighter green towards the top area here. Just like that. Tap, 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 tap. It's like a bunny hopping up and down. Alright, so now I'm done with that tree. Now I'm going to focus on this next tree right there. I'm going to start with my dark green towards the bottom. Tap, tap, tap. Then my regular green. Tap, tap, tap. And as I go to the top, I'm going to add my lighter green. Tap, tap, tap. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to go on to my next tree. Same idea. Dark green towards the bottom here. Okay, I'm just going to add some of that. Tap, tap, tap. Regular green. Tap, tap, tap. And finally, my light green towards the top. Tap, tap, tap. Alright, look at that. Kind of mix them in there. And there you go. Now I have another tree over here. Same idea. Now if you're running out of a certain color, or certain tone, like I am here, I could always go back, get some more of that green, and add just a little bit of the black, because I'm running out of the dark green. There we go. So now that I have my dark green here, I can tap, tap, tap some of the dark green towards the bottom. Tap, 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 tap. Then I can go into my regular green and towards the middle. And at the very top where the light source is, I can add, I'm gonna clean my brush, and I can add my light green towards the top, right here. Tap, 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 mix, 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 and there we go. Wow, look at that, you guys. Gonna add a little bit of the little tints and hints right there. Okay, it's coming along. Now I still have 2 more trees right over here to go. So, same idea. I'm gonna get my dark green and tap, tap, tap towards the bottom, just to fill in some of those branches right there. And then I'm going to move on to my green towards the center part of the tree, and the top part of the tree is going to be my lighter green. Tap, 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 right where it meets in the middle with all the rest of the trees. Okay, tap, tap, tap. If you want to get a little bit more contrast, you can get a little bit more white. Tap, tap, tap towards the middle there. Tap, 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 and there you go. Alright, so tap, tap, tap. That's the technique that we're using today for our project, okay? So you kind of go straight up and down like a bunny jumping up and down. So to create that beautiful texture for our leaves. Alright, so I am running out of dark green. So what am I going to do? Just make some more. Gonna get some more of that green, a little bit more of the black, mix, mix, mix. Tiny bit more black. And there we go. Now I'm gonna use that dark green for my last tree right here. Tap, 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 tap. Okay, and regular green. Tap, 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 tap. And finally, my light green tone towards the top. So tap, 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 tap. Blend, blend, blend. And there we go. Look at that, you guys. There we go. Now it seems like those trees are coming in together and forming this beautiful landscape. Alright, so here is our final product. I really like the effect that these trees have. It starts thick to thin. It seems like they all kind of meet in the center area with this nice combination of the leaves going from lighter area where the light is hitting at the top, then going from darker to darkest towards the bottom. So we have our light green, our regular green, and then our dark green towards the bottom here, which makes it a beautiful contrast for our trees, and it also gives it that sense of perspective, kind of like a dimension that you kind of see the trees going up higher and higher and higher. It seems like those trees are really, really tall, and you can have that sense of perspective by shaping our trees the way we did in the beginning, like a little triangular shape, thicker at the bottom, thinner at the top. So those are all pretty good strategies to creating a good sense of depth. And I think we were able to achieve that in our painting today. So give yourselves a nice pat on the back. You guys did a wonderful job. And we'll see you guys in our next video. Thank you so much, boys and girls.